Now, corresponding to the basic rules of addition and multiplication, we also have to be very familiar with these basic rules of fractions. So to go through these, the first one is very similar to properties of negations that we've seen previously. If you have a negative sign in front of a fraction, that negative sign can be placed wherever you would like, out front, in the top, or we might call the numerator, or in the bottom, which we call the denominator. Additionally, if both the numerator and the denominator have a negative sign that factors out, you can cancel that off. A negative and a negative simply become a positive. Additionally, if you have some non-zero quantity c that's present in the top and the bottom, and as long as you can factor it completely out of the top and factor it completely out of the bottom, those c's would cancel off, leaving you with an a over b. Now, a very important and frequently used property would be the addition or subtraction of fractions. In order to add together two fractions, they have to have a common denominator. So here, if the common denominator is b, what you do is you leave that denominator as b, and then you add or subtract in the top, a plus or minus c. Now, if you do not have a common denominator, what you need to do is create a common denominator. So in this case, if we have the a over b plus or minus c over d, in order to add them, what we would do is say we need a denominator of b times d. So we would take this first fraction and multiply it by d over d, and the second fraction and multiply it by b over b. So in this case, we would end up with AD divided by BD plus or minus CB divided by BD. And once you get it to this case, it's the familiar rule above where you have the common denominator. So everything would be over BD, and in the top we have AD plus or minus the quantity BC. And notice there's no difference between writing BC or CB because the order that we multiply does not matter. In terms of multiplying fractions, you just multiply the tops and the bottoms. Another very important and frequently encountered property would be dividing by a fraction. And the simplest way to say this is that dividing by a fraction is the same thing as just multiplying by its reciprocal. So take the fraction in the denominator, flip it over, and multiply the numerator by it. So let's look at a few basic examples. So in each of these, we will perform whatever operations are indicated and then simplify the expression. So in the first quantity here, we have 2x minus 3 quantity cubed. So to cube is the same thing as multiplying that quantity together 3 times. And in order to multiply this together, what we might want to do is just first think about multiplying together the first two, and once we've multiplied that out, move on to the third expression. So remember that when you're multiplying together two quantities of this form, you might think of the process of FOILing. We multiply together 2x times 2x, then the 2x hits a minus 3, then minus 3 hits a 2x, and minus 3 times minus 3. So that first expression there would be 2x times 2x, which is 4x squared, minus 6x, and then again from the minus 3 times the 2x, we have another minus 6x, and then plus 9 from minus 3 times minus 3. And this is all multiplied by 2x minus 3. And note that the two middle terms here combine together to be minus 12x. And now we are going to essentially do exactly the same thing again. What we are going to do is look in our first set of brackets, and we're going to take the 4x squared and multiply it by the 2x and the minus 3. So that will give us 8x cubed minus 12x squared. Then we take the minus 12x and multiply it by both of those quantities as well. So we're going to have minus 24x, and then we are going to have plus, oh excuse me, x squared, and then we'll have plus 36x. That's minus 12 times minus 3. The minus a minus becomes a positive. And lastly here, we take the 9 and we multiply it by both of those quantities. So 9 times 2x is 18x. And 9 times minus 3 is minus 27. And the last step is to combine together all like terms. So you have 8x cubed. In terms of the quadratic terms, there's minus 12 and minus 24 of them. So that gives us minus 36. And then we combine together the x terms, 36 and 18, so 54 x's. And then we have one constant term, the minus 27. And this would be the simplified solution. In this next example, we're dealing with fractions, and we would like to add together 3 separate fractions. And in order to do so, what we know we need to do is find a common denominator. And if we focus in on this first fraction and its denominator, y squared plus 2y is really y times y plus 2. And now looking at the denominator of the middle term, y, the third term, y plus 2. These 3 quantities can have the common denominator y over y plus 2. So what we are going to need to do is take the middle term and multiply it by y plus 2 over y plus 2. And take the third term and multiply it by y over y. So for these 3 terms, we have the common denominator y over y plus 2. In the first term, the numerator is 12. In the second term for the numerator, we can distribute the 4 through, so that would become 4y plus 8. And the numerator in the third term is 2y. And our last step here is to simply combine the like terms in the top. 4y plus 2y is 6y, and 12 plus 8 is 20, which leaves us with the simplified version that we are looking for. So let's finish with one more simple example. We would like to add together these 2 fractions and then simplify our solution. And once again, the observation to make is we have denominators of x plus 3 and x squared minus 9. Somehow we need to get a common denominator. And what one might recall is a difference of squares formula that you have seen in the past. If you have x squared minus a squared for some quantity a, you can rewrite this as x plus a times x minus a. So in terms of the above fractions, we note that the denominator of x squared minus 9 is really x plus 3 times x minus 3. So if we would like to get a common denominator, we can take the first term and multiply it by x plus 3 over x plus 3. Or excuse me, we can multiply that by x minus 3 over x minus 3. And then we are adding on x over x plus 3, x minus 3. So we have the common denominator we are looking for, x plus 3 times x minus 3, that's x squared minus 9. In the top we have x minus 3 in the first term, plus x in the second term. And this simplifies nicely as 2x minus 3, all divided by x squared minus 9.